Okay. Well, welcome everyone to today's collective sessions of District 52. Today we're doing something very special and different as we are having our very first guest on our show today by way of Florida. We have attorney Don H. Williams. He is a very good friend of myself, of my family. Met him about 15 years ago when I first started working in the law industry before I started acting. And he is known, he's represented some cases, some notable cases from insurance fraud to all types of different cases. And I'm gonna let him introduce himself and talk more about that. Don, welcome to the show. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us to be a part of Chicago 52 Collective Sessions. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
That's good, that's good. So today our topic is police reform. It was brought to all of our attention over the holidays of an incident in Ohio where an unarmed Black man was shot and killed by a police officer. This is an incident that is happening way too often than not. It seems as if the frequency has yet to yield, and it is a topic that we should continue to address and discuss until there is a proper reform or remedy for it. So Don Williams, do you have an insight? What's your view on what happened? Do you believe the police in that particular incident was trained properly?
Well, I don't have a lot of knowledge of that specific case at this point in time, but I think that one of the things that I think really helps with policing is body cams. And I think they should be mandatory. And here in South Florida, I practice predominantly in the Fort Lauderdale area, and all the police agencies here have the Axion body cam, and I think that has done a lot to address the problem, curb the problem of police brutality. Because if it's all on tape, it's hard to refute it. What happened? And I know here, the local prosecutor's office, they won't file a resisting arrest charge unless there's a body cam of the incident, because that was a go-to charge by the police for a long time. He resisted, and as a result of the resisting, we found this drug on him, or we did this, we did that. They won't even approach it without a body cam now.
It's interesting. So in regards to the body cam, I believe in that case, he turned it on after he shot the unarmed man, but they were able to recoup the footage because of a relay. How is that possible?
Well, again, go ahead. I'm sorry, John. Go ahead. Again, the camera's no good if you don't turn it on. And they should be, as soon as that car stops, before you get out of the car, you just go on the vest and you turn the camera on. So it should be just second nature, becomes second nature to the police officer. You've called in the stopping of the car. You've got the car, and most cars have cameras in the car, and you keep that camera running. And as soon as you get out, as you're getting out of that car, you just turn it on.
David, you said that you were creating a podcast and you were studying police brutality and reform. Are there any questions that you would like to ask Mr. Williams?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Hello, and Don, thanks for joining us today. It's great to have you here. Yeah, no, I'm doing just as an extension of my radio show. I'm doing a series of podcasts, hopefully starting in January, late January, on policing in America, starting with the origins of policing in America up to now and all the issues going on. So I guess the $64,000 question is, do you believe, with your experience in law and in just in life in general, do you believe that systemic racism is a thing amongst policing in America? Systemic, not just sporadic, isolated, and occasional racist here or there. Do you really believe it's embedded in the system one way or another?
I think it's embedded in a lot of the system, in a lot of the police departments. And it seems like the smaller the police department, probably the greater that it is.
Interesting.
And it has to change. And until it does, we're going to continue to see incidents like this. The larger police departments, I think I'm just recalling from my experience in South Florida, the larger the police department, the more diverse the police department is. And I think they're having a better chance of dealing with racism. But you get these small police departments in these small towns, and it seems like you're always seeing these incidents involving these small police departments.
Okay, but so what might follow from what you just said is that in the bigger cities like Minneapolis or Chicago, New York, so on, that there's less likely to be a systemic racist issue going on. But that's where you're finding the majority of these issues occurring, is in the bigger metropolis areas. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is because of you've got cameras in these bigger departments, and so you're flushing out these guys. Some of these small departments, if they don't have cameras, you have a tough time flushing it out. The George Floyd incident with all the cameras was when I saw that originally. I'm saying, how does this guy get from point A to point B and everything, and he's handcuffed and he's supposedly resisting? It's nonsense. But
Okay, and what do you say to the suppression of evidence once it is received on camera? Sometimes there are incidences such as the recent one we've had in Chicago, where we later learned that the mayor of Chicago herself suppressed some evidence coming to light, which was on footage. Do you foresee that as being a difficulty when utilizing body cameras? Does it become a more lengthy process of law and litigation that then arises?
Well, they shouldn't be suppressing anything. If it's on the camera, it should come out, and just let the truth come out. There shouldn't be any withholding of body cam evidence. And I strongly disagree with that. If that's the mayor's position that she took in that case, you shouldn't be suppressing this stuff. I mean, it happened. If it happened, let the chips fall in the bowl.
Okay. The other question a lot of people have when it comes to camera and utilizing cameras is the cost. On the one side, we have the defunding the police movement. On the other side, we have people that are want to question the police brutality cases and have strong footage of what is going on, because of the high media spin rises as a result. So what do you say to that and the cost? Is it justifiable?
First of all, I don't believe in defunding the police. We need police protection, but the cameras cost around $700 per officer, and it sounds like a lot at first, but when you talk about all the cost you're going to save in litigation cost and other costs, it's peanuts. I mean, for $700, I think those Axiom cameras cost around $700 a piece, and they probably sell them in bulk for less than that. And the bottom line is, get everybody equipped, and get everybody using them, and then you're gonna have a better idea of what happened on the street. I know here locally, it's been years ago, they won't even take a confession. The state attorney's office won't even take a confession from a defendant and use it in evidence if it's not video audio recording. They don't want just an audio recording. They want an audio video recording. So, and that way, not only do you see and hear exactly what transpired in that interview room, and it should be the same on the road. You should be able to see and hear exactly what transpired.
Okay. Do you find that it's easier for juries and people that are, watching footage to make a decision as a result? Is it easier for them to visualize at all? Have you seen a difference in the statistics on that?
I'm not familiar with the statistics, but I know that video, I hate seeing video sometimes because the video tells it like it is.
No,
And,
that's true.
Most of my cases in the last 15 years have been first-degree murder cases. So I'm dealing with very serious cases. Most of them are death penalty cases. And when you have video, whether it's private video or police video, it's tough to deal with. I'm defending a case right now where it's a home invasion, and the homeowner had videos cameras in his house, and unfortunately you get to see my client from two different angles pick a gun up and shoot the homeowner. So there's no question as to what happened. I mean, you've got a video. It doesn't have audio, but the bottom line is you have video of exactly what happened. So video evidence can either hurt you or help you.
True, because I think when we deal with a lot of criminal law, it's not, it's on a beyond reasonable doubt scale that we're working with, which
Right.
can make it difficult. And then we have the actus reus and then the mens rea, which is, the actual commission of the act and the mental element. So I guess it helps in some way when it comes to viewing whether or not the act occurred. As for the mental element, I mean, that's something else that comes into question in presenting such cases.
I think when you bring up the actual different perspective of the different witnesses, when you look at footage in the video, I don't think the interpretation applies to that.
Yeah, you've got
As far as mental, the different witness interpretations when you're actually looking at the footage doesn't lie. But I mean, in the case, when we want to go back to the actual case in Ohio, and even George Floyd, when we had the video of him putting his neck on his and the police officer, we watched that. The whole world watched that happen. So the interpretation, I don't think anyone got that wrong.
no.
When you're looking at that, there is no different interpretations and witnesses, so that wouldn't apply.
No, the first thing when I saw that case, I said, and I'm looking at it from a criminal defense lawyer's standpoint, and I've defended police officers charged with crimes, and I'm watching him walk George Floyd across the street. Well, he's handcuffed, so his hands are behind him. Sure, he's a big guy, but then they put him into the back seat of the driver's side of the car. And then the next thing you see, he comes out the passenger's side of the car. Well, anybody that we know, he didn't open that passenger side door because his handcuffs are handcuffed behind him. And anybody familiar with police cars knows that you can't open the rear passenger door from the inside of the car. So it means a police officer had to open that door and pull him out of the car. And they pulled him out of the car, and now he's on the passenger side of the car. And then that's when the tragedy occurs. So there was no resisting by Floyd. This wasn't Floyd's fault. There was no way he could, that he was doing anything other than being pulled and tugged and eventually strangled.
Okay, David, is there something you'd like to?
Yeah, I had a question going back a little bit about how you said you don't believe in defunding the police because we need police. So my understanding of the phrase defunding the police does not necessarily even frequently mean getting rid of police. It just means reallocating some of the funds to mental health, maybe setting up a different type of force, like made up of mental health workers that can deal with certain situations that cops would tend to draw their arms on or in because they don't know what else to do. For example, the autistic teenager in Utah this past summer, the mother of which called the cops because she couldn't handle him for whatever reason. He's autistic and he's a young boy. 2 cops show up, they shot and killed him. Because they don't know what else to do. They're not trained to calm him down. They're trained to commandeer a situation, even to the point of deadly force. It's because a lot of what happens nowadays is not, it's the cops' fault because they're a moral agent and they're responsible for the behavior, regardless of the law. And we'll get to that again later. But their training that they are given is that you think the worst case scenario going into any situation. That's why a lot of times you see cops with their guns on their hands for somebody who blew off a stop sign. They're trained to think that is the worst possible scenario waiting for them in that car, even though it's something like 1 out of every 15,000 cars actually have on the road actually have a gun in it. It might even be 20,000. It's extremely unlikely that any cop is going to ever could pull over somebody with a gun in the car. The actual reasoning behind the actual rationale of the situation is completely lost on cops training. You don't go into any situation thinking the worst possible scenario. That's just not even rational. It doesn't even make sense. So anyway, going back to the defunding thing, Don, what do you think about that? It's not getting rid of cops, but reallocating funds and so on.
I definitely think there should be a reallocation of some funds, because the police are called, and parents do this all the time. Their child's strung out in drugs, or he's got a mental handicap or something, and he's acting up, and the next thing you know, the cops are there, and they're not trained. They're not trained social workers. They're not trained to deal with these things, and so it escalates generally. It generally escalates into some type of resisting, and then the person's taken off to jail, and then the parents are saying, "But I only called you to help me." Well, the problem is they're not skilled in helping, and
that's how they help. That's what they do.
That's how we help. It'd be like, the bottom line is we're there to enforce the law. Somebody enforces the law, and unless you got some seasoned veteran or something that's dealt with this before, the next thing you know, the person's off in jail, and they're not getting the help they need. And I think one of the biggest problems that the police have to deal with is the homeless problem. And then they have to they end up arresting these people. And then what do? They throw them in jail. Well, you know how much it costs per day to lock somebody up? It costs a lot of money. It was a few years ago, I was over in Clearwater for a law school event, and they had a new courthouse, and behind it there was this, it looked like a hotel, motel, and I said, but it didn't have, and I said, what is that? And they said, well, the sheriff convinced the county to buy a hotel, and when we have a homeless person, if we're going to arrest them, we don't take them to jail, we take them to this hotel, because it's got minimal security, and they have the people stay there, while they sort through their legal problem. And I thought, what a great idea, to have a low cost place where they can take the people to, and they're not in the regular jail. So defunding if defunding means reallocation of funds, then yes, I think that's a very good idea. And particularly, and police don't like going to these domestic violence calls. Those are the most dangerous calls going on. And then what happens? We have a joke here in South Florida in the domestic violence court, because the guy or the woman will get arrested, and then by the time the court date comes, they're back together, holding hands, coming to court, and so you've wasted all this manpower, and you're criminalizing somebody when they probably need some good marital counseling or good relationship counseling.
Right. Anna, did you want to?
That's true. That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to say the phrase of reimagine the police.
Okay.
And then that way we can bring in mental health. We can lighten up the load of the officers, where they're not just getting everything that society doesn't want to deal with and just throw it in their court with the 21-week training. But I did want to ask you a question, Don. I do like the culture that your area has created, where they don't even touch a case unless there's some kind of video. I think that's really important, because it levels the playing field with he said, she said, or criminal versus cop, and they're always going to pick the cop's word.
Exactly.
So I think it levels that playing field where it at least is true, even if it's the most truth, which is what we want. We want the most truth out there.
Right.
So I think that's great. How is the culture with prosecutors and cops? Because it came up in a discussion where prosecutors and cops, they need to work together on items. But
Right.
then if a prosecutor receives a case where there's an allegation against that officer, how does that play out? And how does it play out in your area?
We've got, actually, it's going to be interesting, because we have just elected, for the first time in over 40 years, we have a new chief prosecutor, the prosecutor that was been there since 1976. Can you believe it? That's a long time. He didn't seek re-election. And so we have a new young prosecutor that takes office January 1st. And it's going to be interesting to see how that changes. He's a young black man, and it's the first time we've had a black. Here we don't call them district attorneys; we call them state attorneys. It's the first time that we've had a black chief state attorney ever in the county, and it's the first time we've had some new blood in the office. So it's going to be interesting to see how he approaches that problem. I think when there's an allegation against the police, I think that you need a separate prosecutorial unit to handle those cases, and that unit shouldn't be, for lack of a better word, buddy with the police. And if you have that kind of demarcation or difference, I think you can make a difference. It'll make a difference, because now they're looking at the officer as another potential defendant. And you realize that it's always tough. It's always tough to prosecute a police officer. I started my career as a prosecutor, and I prosecuted a police officer for tampering with evidence, and it wasn't a good result. He had planted evidence on two. There was three people. He planted evidence on two of the three, and because he wanted to make a drug bust, and unfortunately, these guys and these were all white defendants. There was no issue of race in the process, and the bottom line is, two of those defendants were actually in prison when the detective's partner came forward and said, look, this guy Gary Beck, he set these guys up. But what did you have? I had one officer's word against another officer's word. The judge that had put the two gentlemen in prison because they had bad records, he immediately released them. But that was, they'd been in jail for a year or two. And but the bottom line is, I had a sergeant that was on trial, and I had another detective who's saying he did X. And unfortunately, back then, that was in the early 70s, by the jury, well, cops don't do anything wrong. And he was acquitted. And he walked by me after the jury found him not guilty, and he looks at me and he says to me, I'll be back on the road tonight. Why don't you drive through the city of North Lauderdale? I can tell you, I never went through the city of North Lauderdale again as long as he was on duty, because who knows what he would do. But that's the problem you have with prosecuting police officers.
David?
If you don't mind, real quick, that's a very interesting story. Sorry, I'm trying to get better lighting here. And I know a lot of lawyers in my area. And when I lived in Portland, I was really good friends with a group of lawyers. And I've heard similar stories of, I've heard stories of basically going from this notion in America where, cops are by definition things that don't do anything wrong, to, all right, we want we want video, we want audio, we want hard evidence because cops lie. Okay, and I've talked to plenty of defender attorneys who say they've seen cops lie flat out, boldly, right on the stand. And a lot of it has to do with this, so basically I'm really shocked and impressed to hear that a cop turned on another cop in your case, because cops seem to have this gang-like loyalty to one another, well above and beyond their loyalty to the citizens they're sworn to protect and serve. So they'll plant evidence, they'll lie, they'll coerce testimonies, in large part sometimes to protect their fellow officers, which of course isn't right. The only thing that should matter in all these cases is the truth, not, that's it. So what do you think of qualified immunity, getting to the bones of all of that, of how difficult it is to keep cops accountable for their actions has in large part to do with this federal notion of qualified immunity?
Well, we have in Florida qualified immunity also. And
is it a state thing or a federal thing?
Well, it can be both. And
okay.
in regards to state officers, you have qualified immunity, and then you also have a cap on how much you can, if you sue a police officer, you've got a cap on how much you can get from the municipality. So it used to be $100,000. Well, it sounds like a lot, but it's really not when you figure what the lawyer's going to have to do to put money into developing the case, because let's face it, most of the people that you're going to be representing don't have the financial means to pay the lawyer on an hourly basis. So the lawyer's got to take it on a contingent fee basis. And so that deters people from pursuing those cases, because the bottom line is what you can get $100,000, and that's if you hit a home run. And so it's I think the immunity the cap needs to be raised. Let's face it, it's inflation. We need to raise the cap, and if you raise the cap, then you'll see that maybe these lawyers will take the case and pursue it. But it's just like they do they raise the cap on med mal, and so because it's a sign of the times, inflation. So raise the cap on these things, and because when I say raise the cap applies to the city, because I mean, let's face it, that's who has the city or the county. That's who has the deep pocket, not the individual police officer. So,
Which means the taxpayers end up paying for it twice.
yes,
We typically pay for their training and their salary and all the equipment, and then we have to pay for every time they do something stupid.
exactly. And in fact,
Really, these goes into tens to hundreds of millions of dollars, depending on the city, per year, as far as trials against cops, complaints against cops. It's audacious. It's ridiculous.
it
Sorry.
is, and you have to. The key is hiring in the first place. You've got to do a better job of sorting out who you're going to hire.
That's interesting.
So you feel like there should be more scrutiny in the hiring process? Do you think a possible psychological testing is something that should be looked into? Or the other thing I also wanted to raise was there's a level of ex-military that is often recruited.
Well, yeah, because what happens is I'll address your point on each by point. There is a psychological aspect in the hiring process, and yes, a lot of former military are hired because at least on the scale down here in the South Florida areas, they get X number of points toward hiring if they've got military experience. So they may all jump somebody else that doesn't have military experience because they've got points added to their score because of military experience. I'll give you a prime example of what bad hiring can do. And this takes us back a few years. Back in the early 80s, in Miami, they had what was called the Mariel boat lift. And so you had this large influx of Cubans fleeing Cuba. And as a result, the city of Miami had to overnight increase its police force, which meant to deal with all the problems to dealing with it. And so what happened was they increased their police force, but they had to take shortcuts in the hiring process, and there was not proper screening. And then what happened by the 90s, and Candace can maybe remember this, then there was the big case of the Miami River cops. There was a whole bunch of police officers on the city of Miami police force that had been hired during this onslaught, not proper screening, and in fact, within the police force, formed a criminal gang. And they were involved in drug smuggling, killing drug smugglers, and everything else. And they were finally sorted out and prosecuted. But it was all the result of poor screening. So screening is key to getting qualified people.
Well, that's an interesting point too, as far as the screening part goes, because I've heard people advocate for less, if not, or no military veterans allowed on police forces, because the police force should not be like a military organization. They are not soldiers in a war zone or a battle zone. This isn't a war-torn country. They're dealing with their own people. Very, very different situation. And we don't want people who are already trained killers to be on the street policing us. But I couldn't imagine a police force not wanting an ex-military person on there with all their training already. So that's interesting to see what's going to happen there. But do you think that, how do I say this? Do you think, I want to go back to the systemic racism thing. Do you think that there's a notion of, do you think that systemic racism amongst policing in this country can be done away with by legislation?
No, I don't know how you legislate a problem away. I assume there's some legislation that would help, but I just don't know how you legislate a change in attitude. You know, we can pass
Right.
all the laws we want. We have to change the culture, really, and we have to change just people's attitudes about the way they deal with other people. And if you change that, then you've gone a long way toward changing attitudes. You know, it's like a young prosecutor and the police versus somebody like myself. I've been practicing for 47 years. My approach, I get along with the police very well. They know I don't take any nonsense from them, but I teach at the police academy on occasion, and I tell them, look, you lie, and I'm going to catch you. So just tell the truth and let the chips fall where they may. I mean, you don't want me embarrassing you on the stand. So, and I think, and another thing about reform that could be easily done in places, Florida is one of the only states in the United States where we allow depositions in criminal cases.
What does that mean?
By that, you know, like in a civil case, like an auto accident case or anything else like that, the other side gets to call you in and take your deposition and find out all about the accident. Well, in Florida, in any felony case, we have the right to subpoena the police officers in and question them under oath with a court reporter and with the prosecutor there about the case. And we're not stuck with their one-sided view in a police report. And so, and we know what our client's version is. And so we can start questioning them about the case, about the evidence. And at the end of the day, yeah, it takes time and it takes money. But at the end of the day, we know the prosecutor will sit there sometimes and go, uh-oh, I didn't realize this was going on, or I didn't realize that was going on. Or by the same token, we can go back and tell our clients, this is what the case, this is what they have. They've got you. They don't have you. And it helps move the system along. But depositions where you can bring people in, question them under oath, is it gets to the truth faster and without having a jury trial. And then you can I think it goes a long way, and the cops know that you're bringing them in, and they know you're going to be questioning them, and I think it helps them eventually tell the truth, the complete truth.
Yeah, I think that's very important, Don. Going back on just vetting whoever you're going to hire, there needs to be a vetting probationary period. And I think there should be a lot of mental health screenings and psychological screenings to see if people can get along and put them in situations where they have to be, it's diverse. And then you spend time with them, and then you figure out what their true character is.
Right.
And then you go from there. So, I mean, because that's, as far as the police is concerned, I mean, they're here to protect and serve and obey the law. And so they should be vetted the most. So I'm glad that you are here. David, I hope this has answered your questions. Aaliyah, I hope this has answered, any of your questions or concerns or thoughts. Anna, yours as well. Thank you. This is a very serious talk amongst us. You're our first guest, and we really appreciate you being here. Dave, is there anything else you want to say? I saw you looking up to the sky like you wanted to say something.
I'm trying to figure out lighting in this.
You
Yes,
won't
I
hold
do.
your tongue or be respectful. So go ahead.
What's that?
Handed.
Oh, sorry, go. What's happening? Okay, anyway, speak. Okay, so
I just wanted to talk about the militarization of the police. I even in my campaign trails, I'd heard from an elderly gentleman about barber shops and how he noticed a lot of police attending a specific, shop, and they'd get those military haircut styles in the police. And he just noticed that there was a lot of disrespect with citizens and in general because of
I've seen that. I think
else I want to talk about.
no, I think the militarization of the police. I think it depends on the agency. It really does. I think it goes because you have some agencies where they like here. We used to always joke that the Hollywood Police Department, City of Hollywood Police Department, in years past, we wondered like, what gym do they go hire these guys from? They're all muscle bound. They all got the close cropped hair, and they on their road patrol, and they look like holy. I mean, you could pick out a lot of the Hollywood police guys because they all had the uniform shirts with the tight sleeves and everything, and showing the biceps and everything, and it was just
What happened?
It was the culture.
Yeah.
So I think it goes from department to department as to what this militarization. But I thought when I saw that question, a lot of these departments too have they're acting like they're a pseudo paramilitary organization. They buy these armored carriers and all this stuff, and you think, what the heck? I mean, do we really need this stuff? But the federal government makes it available to them at I guess some rock bottom price, or grants it to them. So they grab up all this stuff, and so they end up being a paramilitary organization. They've got armored car carriers and things like that, which they've got I know one police department here locally has got this thing, they call it the tank, and they drive around in it, and it's like, are you kidding me? We don't need that. But,
Yeah. So what's the future, the future that you see of policing in America? In closing, we have to wrap this up. This has been very foretelling and very good, very informative.
I hope all this I think the biggest thing too has been cameras. Everybody's got a cell phone camera, and I think that's bringing attention to the problem. And I think that the wise police administrators are going to say, look, you don't know who's going to have a camera on out there. And if we keep having problems with you, and these videos show up on TikTok and all these different media sources, we're just going to have to get rid of you. And I think a lot of it too is the problem is there is a probationary period, but then once they in the communities and the cities that have a union, once you get them in the union, it's tough to get them out. And I think there needs to be some reform in that area, because once they're it's just like school teachers too. You can't get rid of the incompetent school teachers because they're a member of the union. You can't get rid of the incompetent police because it's too hard because they're a member of the union. Now, I'm not a union buster, but the bottom line is there has to be some reform to allow for these, for the rotten eggs. And there's only a few. There's a few rotten eggs, but the few rotten eggs get all the attention. So there's got to be some kind of reform to, in terms of the collective bargaining agreement, to be able to get rid of them. And I think that would bode well for the future of policing too, is if you can make it easier to sever relations with the bad cops.
Oh. David, Aaliyah, is there anything else you want to say in closing?
I just want to elaborate a bit more on this 1033 program. If you're able to inform us a bit more about that. Do you know anything about that?
What is exactly the 1033 program? But I don't recognize it by a number.
It's pretty much, you've sort of touched on it in terms of it's looking at some of the weapons that are utilized in the police force that are actually military grade, and whether or not that is something that would alarm you in dealing with cases that come before the court. Why are we using such grade level weapons when dealing with civilians?
Well, you know, it's funny how the pendulum swings. There was a case here in when the police used to use 38s, and the bad guys had the heavy armored guns. And there was a case here in South Florida some years ago, and it was the worst day in the history of the FBI. It was a shootout, and the bottom line is a carload of FBI agents were surveilling a group involved in robberies, and in fact, a friend of mine was an FBI agent that was involved in that, and the FBI at that point in time only allowed their agents to have a standard issue 38 caliber revolver with 6 shots, and they got into a shootout, and my friend was almost killed. He was on the ground, shot, and when one of the other agents shot one of the defendants that was over him. But so from that time on, now the FBI armed up, started using Glock pistols and having a special response team, and then, you know, the local police department started using Glock semi-automatic weapons, and then the next thing you know, they're advancing from the Glock to certain members of the police department are carrying AR-15s and everything. And I think, and let me put it this way. I'm not totally against guns. I've got a number of guns myself, but I do think that they've got to do something about assault rifles. They've got to do something about outlawing assault rifles. Nobody needs an assault rifle. I mean, you can have a handgun for protection or whatever, but you do not need an assault rifle. And because of assault rifles, the police have assault rifles, the bad guys have assault rifles, and then that scares the general populace to death when they see a police officer in his armored vest with an assault rifle. I mean, I think, you know, are we under siege? And I think it would go a long way. I know it's not a popular issue in the United States. I believe in the Second Amendment, but I think there should be limitations on the Second Amendment. We don't need to see cops walking around with AR-15s and.
Yeah, I went to a Cubs game not this summer, the summer before, and just a swath of cops with, like, you know, machine guns on their chest. I'm like, oh my God, it's just disgusting. You know, I mean, I'm trying to go to a baseball game and I feel like I'm in a military state.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, the Paris subways are that way right now.
Oh no, I flew into Rome once, and yeah, soldiers sitting up there on the balconies with Uzis. Awesome.
Yeah. It's
Very disconcerting. It's the state of things. It's very upsetting. Yeah, no, I wonder if, one last thing is just, as a general point, I wonder if, our society, there's two reasons why we have cops. Either A, we need them, which means that there's something wrong with the way that we're treating each other, or B, we don't and we're mistaken about that fact. Either way, it's bad. Cops are always a consequence of something is wrong, either our reasoning or our behavior. Okay. So I think that to try to get society, like you said before, I mean, legislation isn't going to, it'll give you, cause to bring people to court to sort out your differences and abuses towards each other. You got to change people's minds and people's hearts. You got to make it so that people don't want to hurt other people.
That's
And we're
true.
all born, your token sociopath aside, we're all born with a moral compass. It's called conscience. Okay, we all have access to what is right and what is wrong. That's what human reason is for. There's ethics and philosophy. Philosophers have been dealing with these issues for thousands of years. There's all sorts of rational arguments, systems, methods by which you can come to rational conclusions concerning how you should treat other people. All the information, just critical thinking is a big part of this. I know Ed was here. He'd be speaking in my favor on this as well. It's just, cops are just a sign that something is wrong. So to have more of them, I don't think is the answer. When we start seeing a responsible diminishing of the amount of police in this country without a rise in crime and crap like that, something's going the right way. That's my final word.
I have one more thing to say. You have a wealth of experience. You've been an attorney for a long time. You're in an area that has body cameras and that doesn't even touch the case unless there's video evidence. Do you think in your area it's reached a perfect system where it's efficient justice, or is there something else that you would like to see to make it more efficient?
I think we're headed in the right direction, and I hope that with our new state attorney in place that we'll continue in the right direction. I think that we're making progress. Unfortunately, with there was an incident with the Black Lives Matter march here in Fort Lauderdale, where the city of Fort Lauderdale kind of lost it, and we're dealing with the repercussions of that. We're in the process of picking a new police chief as a result of that, and hopefully that decision is going to be made after the first of the year. I was looking at the different candidates, and I'm hoping that that'll make some meaningful change within that department, because that is one of the, besides the Broward County Sheriff's Office, the City of Fort Lauderdale Police Department is the second largest police department in our county, Broward County. So I think we're headed in the right direction with a cautious eye, I should say.
Do you feel that multiculturalism or having a greater diverse ethnicity within the police force would make a difference? Has it made a difference? Do you feel that in your experience and handling of cases that what different people bring as backgrounds could be a difference?
Oh, without a doubt, we've got to get rid of the white male police department. The totally white male police department. We've got in Broward County alone, we've got a large Haitian population, a large Jamaican population, a large Brazilian population. We've got a large Russian population. So we need police officers from all those different cultures people from those different cultures to be police officers. Because we need the police department to reflect the community itself. We can't it can't be the old days of it's all Irish cops in New York City or someplace, or it's all, we need different faces, and we need women, and we need men and women. And I think I see it in our in the police here locally, the departments are diversifying and getting a real mix of cultural backgrounds, which is good. I think the Hallandale Police Department, I don't know if he still is, but the Hallandale Police Department had a Haitian police chief. So, I mean, there's a step in the right direction. You know, you've got, and with the large Hispanic population here, we've got Hispanic police officers, and in Broward County now, surprisingly, with this last election, just this past November, for the first time in the history, and you remember Broward County is the second largest in terms of population in the state of Florida. We've got a black state attorney, we've got a black elected public defender, we've got a black elected sheriff, we've got a black elected supervisor of elections, and we've got a black clerk of court. First time ever. And you've got black leadership at the top of all the key offices dealing with the criminal justice system. So I think we're going to be headed in the right direction.
Okay, well, closing, Aaliyah will be back on her shortly. But in closing, to recap what you said tonight is, one, to not to defund the police, but to reform it by vetting, putting more funds into training, psychological test, mental test, their training as far as their military, their weapons, take away rifles, shotguns, the shotguns, and also diversify the community, which so it can reflect, different cultures, which it would be healthy for us to all get along. So, I mean, Aaliyah's stuff keeps going in and out, but I want to thank you again, Don, for taking the time out to join us and to talk to some of the delegates from the Green Party, Anna from Chicago, and David, he's also in Chicago. He just joined the Green Party. And Aaliyah Sarfraz, well, she'll get back in here. She's a part of the Green Party as well, and also ran for District 52 this term. And I joined the Green Party recently, so which is why I'm here, a part of this group. And as you know, I've known Don since for almost 15 years. Don, 15?
Let's make it 20, Candace.
20 years. Can you tell them how we met? Right? I met.
Yeah, she came to work as I was with a law firm in Miami, and she came to work to fill in for a girl while she was on vacation. And she started working as a paralegal after that. And we struck up a friendship, and we've maintained it. That was year 2000. So
yeah,
we've maintained it for 20 years.
20 years.
Wow.
You're making me feel old, Candace. So.
Me, you. Hey, we get better with age, and I'm just grateful to.
And you all are Green Party. I'm a rare bird. I'm a Republican for Biden. I had my sign out. I'm an old style Republican. I'm physically conservative, but socially progressive. So I'm probably going to have to become an independent, because there's no place for me in Trump's party.
Your party's in a downward spiral right now because of Trump. He has utterly destroyed the Republican Party.
There's nobody that dislikes Donald Trump more than I do, and now he's our neighbor. I live in Boca Raton, so he's going to be 30 miles up the road. And he's making noise. He wants him to name the West Palm Beach airport, make it the make it the Trump airport. This doesn't stop. It doesn't stop, does it?
All right. Well, thank you
Okay.
very much, Don.
My mother's 90. My mother was 97 in November. And 4 years ago, she said, I'm going to live long enough to vote Donald Trump out of office. And she made it.
Good for
That's
her.
good. That's good. That's good.
Good.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Be safe, and we'll reconvene next Sunday. I'm excited to see what we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, these are always great.
Yeah, they are.
Maybe we'll talk about some fiscal, conservative fiscal policy.
Yes.
What we want too. We want some good numbers and make
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if we don't get a hold of some kind of this spending and these all these wars and everything, it's not going to affect me. But you guys and your kids are going to be paying for this. You're going to be bankrupt if spending doesn't get under some kind of control.
Yeah. And the taxpayers are paying a lot. We have the 1033 program, so we're paying it to the military companies, the Boeing, the Halliburton, and then we're paying it. They're getting it for free to the low cost through the 1033 program, and then we have to pay for all of the litigation and all of the stuff that comes along with it. And I'm a taxpayer, and I'm done. I'm tired. I want change. I want it now.
Yes.
No, I agree with you. I mean, how do we go from whether you liked Clinton or not, we didn't have a deficit then to, and now we've got the biggest deficit in the history of the country, and it's just, and it seems to just keep getting larger and larger and larger. So
No representation. So almost 70%, 67% wants Medicare for all. Where is it?
yeah,
Where's our representation?
but we do need with this present pandemic, we do need just all these loans to these businesses and everything. We need the aid going directly to the people at this point in time. I mean, I'm representing a doctor. He's charged with fraud over. He got one of those small business loans, but he spent it on not the business. That's what people are doing. I mean, I would, if Biden would appoint me, I would work for free for a year just to go after these people that had abused those first loans, because that's just stealing. And I'm at a point in my life where I don't necessarily have to work, but I would volunteer to prosecute these people, because that's just downright stealing. I had a guy here, for instance, he got $2 point something million, just totally fraudulent. Went out and bought a Ferrari and all this stuff, and he said he had a business with 58 people. He had a business with nobody. I mean, but there was no scrutiny, because the banks would get in a hurry without that money. And if you think about it, the banks were making a fee off of it. So is it easier to prosecute? If you think about it, is it easier to fill out a loan application or do the due diligence or supposed due diligence on a $10 million or $10,000 applications? Well, of course, you just do the big one, and you hand some guy $5 million or $10 million, and you go on your way. It's ridiculous. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox for a while.
That's a whole conversation.
I'm 73 and I'm still fighting.
Wow.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
I'll
Thank you.
die of going complaining. So anyway, it was nice meeting y'all. Enjoy.
Nice meeting you too.
It was nice meeting you. Thank you for joining us tonight and offering such a wonderful experience that you've been through now we understand from an attorney's perspective. And I think that's part of the understanding that we're trying to build here. We need to know what's going on from different lenses, and that is so important to building that collective conscious that becomes America.
If you ever have any kind of question about any of the anything we've talked about or any legal stuff dealing with this type of stuff, criminal law, just get my number from Candid. Just feel free to call me.
Thank you.
I'm in day 290 of the lockdown, so with COVID, so
Yeah.
we got plenty of time to talk. Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
I didn't realize we were still counting.
I started counting because I was actually, if you got one more second, I was actually in a first-degree murder trial, death penalty trial in March. We had spent 6 months picking a jury. We were supposed to pick the jury the following Monday when the lockdown started. We had narrowed the jury pool down to 60 people, and we were going to pick our 12 plus our alternates from it. And then everything came to a screeching halt. So now, whenever we start again, I guess we got to start all over. So.
Yeah, that's a whole nother issue. I mean, I know around here, the local judges have suspended all the rights to speedy trial
Right.
because of
Yeah. And my client
COVID.
COVID in the jail.
You know, I know of people just through cop friends of mine that are in jail right now for over a year, and they haven't been convicted of anything. They're just sitting there waiting for their trial. A year of their life, of their liberty, has been totally taken away for them because of this COVID thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it just breaks my heart that, you know, I couldn't even imagine, especially if I knew I was innocent of a crime and I had to sit in jail for a year just for a trial. Oh man, I don't know.
Here, the judges in the state attorney's office here have been very liberal about letting felony offenders, if they don't have a history of violence or and stuff, letting them out of jail on their own recognizance, and in some cases just putting an ankle monitor on them and tell them to go home. So
That's interesting.
yeah, it's been refreshing and to do it, to see them doing it, and because I've got a client who was on a violation of probation. We were just getting ready to have his hearing, and then COVID hit. So the judge was kind enough to just put him on an ankle monitor and send him home. So he's been on basic house arrest since April. His probation term has actually expired. So now we're going to have to deal with that. So, but at least they tried to do the right thing in many cases here.
Was he able to pay his 10% of bail?
Didn't have to.
See, that's what's interesting, because that's what I'm hearing here is that, like, the people who can't, which is a whole nother issue, how ridiculous the judicial system is. You know, if you're poor, you can't afford bail, you're sitting in jail. If you're rich, you can sit at home waiting for your trial. It's ridiculous. But the people that can't afford the bail are just stuck in jail. I haven't heard anything about ankle monitors or anything like that. That's an interesting thing. I'm going to have to ask my cop friend about that.
Yeah, here they just released them on their own recognizance, but with the ankle monitor, and no money changes hands or anything. You go home and you sit. And you've got limited hours to go shopping and stuff like that, but it's worked out very well. It's an enlightened approach, I guess. You know, when we get we're a little spoiled down here because we got some judges and stuff that entertain these things, and then you hear about what's going on in these smaller jurisdictions, or even some of the larger jurisdictions that aren't, like you say, 10% bond, have to put up that. No.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.